everyone. Welcome to the 20th episode of our podcast. I'm thrilled to have Lora Renard in studio with us today. Cindy is not only an international speaker, but also an accomplished author of several books, including A Course in Health and Well-Being, The Business of Forgiveness, Heaven is Now, and her latest book, which we'll be discussing today, Spiritual Coupling, a guidebook for experiencing a holy relationship. Cindy's most recent book uses A Course in Miracles as a framework, and she shares personal stories and examples to show how loving and unconditional relationships represent a world that has been forgiven. She challenges our usual understanding of relationships as interactions between individuals. And what she's claiming is that to really come to know yourself, you ought to look deeper into your projections and therefore perceptions onto the other and really find the gateway into coming to knowing yourself. She's saying that by embracing our true nature, which is pure love, and forgiving the world of our projections, we enter a sacred space within ourselves and catch a glimpse of a deeper reality while still living in the physical world. Through Cindy's teachings, I've learned that the holy relationship offers a transformative journey, shifting our perception from being separate individuals to realizing our unity with everything that exists. If you're curious to learn more about Cindy and her incredible work, be sure to visit her website at www.cindylora.com. Trust me, you don't want to miss what she has to say. In this episode, Cindy and I will dive into some fascinating topics. We'll start by examining the difference between a special relationship and a holy one. We'll uncover the crucial role that effective communication and acceptance play in fostering a healthy connection. We will touch on the transformative powers of forgiveness and how it can positively impact our relationships. And lastly, discover the key elements that can guide us in transforming our special relationships into something truly sacred and profound. Get ready for an enlightening and thought-provoking conversation. Please join me in welcoming Lora Renard.
Cindy, it's so wonderful to have you on this podcast again. Welcome.
Thank you, Gabriela. It's always nice to be here with you.
So you wrote a fourth book, Spiritual Coupling, and it's a guidebook to experiencing a holy relationship. And I cannot thank you enough for accepting this invitation to do a podcast with me again, because in my view, and you know the type of work that I do, I'm a scientist, I conduct research on cancer and quality of life. I think relationships and connection lay at the heart of health and healing. And so have a conversation about this with you. It's absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be a part of this in any way that I can to help further awareness of how important communication is in health and well-being. With communication, whether it's with any type of being, with a person, with an animal, with nature, with your whole environment. You know, it all matters. It all makes a difference when we know how to think about things, how to look at things. And we'll get to it. We'll get to that, right?
Absolutely. So. And you know what? I want to start for those listeners that are not familiar with the Course in Miracles. I would like to start with reading the quote from the Course that explains the difference between a holy and an unholy relationship. I think that will be a great starting point. You okay with that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. An unholy relationship is based on differences, where each one thinks the other has what he has not. They come together, each to complete himself and rob the other. They stay until they think that there is nothing left to steal, and then move on. And so they wander through a world of strangers, unlike themselves, leaving with their bodies, perhaps under a common roof that shelters neither, in the same room, and yet world apart. A holy relationship, on the other hand, starts from a different premise. Each one has looked within and seen no lack. Accepting his completion, he would extend it by joining with another, whole as himself. He sees no differences between these selves, for differences are only of the body. Therefore, he looks on nothing he would take. He denies not his own reality, because it is the truth. Just under heaven does he stand, but close enough not to return to earth, for this relationship is heaven's holiness. How far from home can a relationship so like to heaven be? So I think this, right? I know, right? I know. Having a healthy relationship with your loved ones, friends, social connections, it could be anybody, is wonderful, is desired, and it turns out, science says, a very important determinant aspect of our health and our well-being. So good communication, forgiveness, and a commitment to seeing the other person's interests as one's own are key elements to healthy relationships according to science.
Yeah.
And this you talk about in your book and more. Tell us about that. What are key elements to a healthy, holy relationship in your view, as you describe it in your book, Spiritual Coupling?
Well, first of all, I can't help but really notice, as you were reading those quotes, of the mutually exclusive nature of these two thought systems. The unholy relationship that you quoted, and then based on specialness, and then the holy relationship, completely opposite thought systems. So the holy relationship is something where most people aren't quite familiar, most people, of what that really truly means. And so this is such a good question because the holy relationship is opposite to the special relationship in every respect. The special relationship being, as you quoted there, that we feel a sense of differences with the other, a sense of lack coming from a sense of feeling incomplete. So we need the other person to complete us. So the opposite of that in a holy relationship, you already feel this wholeness, that you're cultivating this wholeness within yourself, recognizing yourself as God created you, which is whole, which is already perfect, which is already in a state of joy. You are certain and connecting with that part of yourself, that's your real identity, so much so that you no longer seek to get something from someone else that you think that you lack, within yourself. You no longer feel the need to project your own ideas of how someone should live their life, no longer feeling the need to change that other person's personality, fix them in some way, because you would understand that to allow other people to have their process and to be as they are because they're growing and learning just like you are, you would understand that if anything comes up in the relationship that disturbs you or disturbs your peace, that it's an opportunity for forgiveness. It's an opportunity to say, look, there's another way that I can look at this person, look at this disturbance. And that other way happens in the mind. And it starts with a shift in perception at the mind level, where we start to let go of the ego's version of the story about that person that we made up, that we preferred to see for a while, and say, well, there's another way that I can think about this. And this way you reclaim your power. So you're not a victim of the circumstances of the relationship. And you can understand that the power lies in your mind. Ultimately, the holy relationship is the forgiven relationship. That's what a holy relationship is, where you do recognize that any challenge that comes up isn't really an opportunity to look within the self and say, well, what have I been thinking about this? Where are my thoughts around this? Am I in my right mind as I'm thinking about, this person, this relationship? What is it for? What's the purpose of this if it's a challenge? So forgiveness is always the key. When we truly forgive ourselves and others, we are living and breathing the holy relationship, allowing, again, that part of that is allowing the person also their process and to be where they are without interfering in a way that makes you feel that you need to possess or own the other and take control of the other's, life lessons and say, this is what I think you should do or you need to do. Instead, the focus is back on the self and saying, no, what do I need to change within me? What do I need to shift? And then you recognize, you're right, that in that quote, part of this is recognizing that our interests are the same with others. We're all on the path home to God. That's why we're the same. We all have a mind where we have a decision-making mind. We all share those parts of the mind where we're choosing between right-mindedness and wrong-mindedness, the Holy Spirit or the ego. We're the same in that regard. And just because someone might be in their ego, if we start to project our own unconscious guilt onto that person because we're pointing out their ego, which means we're pointing out their ego, that means we're in our egos too, if that's all we see. So we want to remember there's another way of seeing, and we want to kind of rise above the battleground and say, and you can ask the Holy Spirit to help you to see this person differently or see the situation differently. Help me to correct my perception, not fix the other person, but to correct my perception. So all of this way of thinking is part of what it means to have a holy relationship when you recognize all of this, that you're not merely in the relationship just to become one with that other individual that appears to be outside of you, but it's about your joining with the other and your oneness ultimately with God. And it takes work. Yeah. Takes practice.
It does take practice. And what I hear you, and I remember reading your book and thinking, gee, it's very uncomfortable at some point because you realize that how you perceive another person, back to the argument you're just making, how I perceive another person is really a metric of my own mind choice.
Yeah.
If I choose to identify myself with my creator love, pure love, and the essence of who we all are, my perceptions are going to be representing that projection.
Yes.
If I choose otherwise, so how I see you is really a metric of my own choice, is a metric of where the cause is, and the cause is in my mind. So that makes it very uncomfortable.
We have to take that's so uncomfortable to realize, wait, I need to take responsibility for how I'm thinking about this.
That's right.
And yes, there's the cause effect relationship, which is the cause always starts in the mind. It's always in the mind of which teacher we're choosing to think with. Whom are we choosing to think about this situation with, this person with, the world with? And we do have that right part of our mind that we can choose. And then we have the wrong part of the mind that keeps us stuck and reinforcing old patterns that don't work, that keeps us in conflict and keeps us at distance from each other and separation. So yes, when we realize that ultimately we see what we want to see, and that can be very disturbing. Really, it can be so disturbing to admit that. Yeah. To go if I see this person as the cause of my problem, and we're trained to think that way. Most of the world is trained to think that something outside of us is always the cause of our problems. And here the Course in Miracles is telling us the complete opposite. Yeah. That I am the cause.
Very uncomfortable.
Yeah. And it can be very uncomfortable. Yeah. Because we have to then take a look. We have to look at ourselves. We have to look at what role we're playing in the uncomfortable situation.
Right.
What is our part?
Cindy, you and I have been friends for a long time. And if there's one thing that if somebody was to come to me and say, describe to me your relationship with Cindy, and you're the perfect girlfriend for me. Honest to goodness. And we've witnessed each other go through relationships, go through sometimes difficult situations, talking about relationships.
Yeah.
There was one difference between the relationship I have with you compared to all other relationships. One thing that I can certainly say is that neither you nor I have we ever made our partners wrong or said, oh, look at her, you know, and use bad words or bad descriptors. Or instead, this has been a relationship where we constantly, if we would have, and we had, you know, issues with the outer world, being our partners, being the people close to us, we would say, this is what I'm seeing. This is the choice that I'm making right now. This is where I am right now. This is where, you know, what I'm learning right now. So it's always been very different, because common relationships are, you know, we're in this together. The world is out there to come and get us. Be my ally and please corroborate my narrative, which means I'm here, it's not my fault, and the world is attacking me. And you and I have never done this, which is very unusual.
Yeah, it is
a friendship, you know. Yeah,
it is unusual.
Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I think that's so beautiful. Actually, that's
it is beautiful. I just realized.
Yeah, that's a rare thing to have. Yeah. When there's absolutely no judgment. No judgment in a negative sense of the word. Yeah.
And the hardest they're going, I mean, I remember I was going through a very difficult time years ago, and I was talking to you about it, and my voice was getting softer and softer and softer. And you would ask me, how does that make you feel? Do you lack it? Do you need anything? And I say, no, I'll tell you exactly how I feel. And I would go into the peacefulness of it all, and the calmness of it at all, when you realize that the world you see, it's something that relies in a choice within. That there's something positive about that, no? Because all of a sudden you're in the driver's seat, you're not the puppet, but you're the puppeteer.
That's the
question is, okay, if thinking the way I do precipitates a certain internal condition, what if I change my mind? And fair enough, if you choose innocence and joy and you move away from the scary dream that you projected into the peaceful, loving, things are actually not so bad, even when you're going through the worst of storms. And you see that throughout the world. How many times don't you read a story in the newspaper about, you know, kids or adults are going through war, through terrible conditions, a tsunami, and yet they're so loving and so kind and so beautiful, utterly beautiful. What is that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's because there's that's the beauty the Course talks about when it talks about the world. The forgiven world will look beautiful to you. In other words, but what he means is, Jesus, who's the voice of the Course, what he means is it's not literally your eyes look about and see images and you say, oh, that tree is beautiful or that sky is beautiful. The forgiven world is what's beautiful, because you're no longer seeing yourself as separate from anyone or anything. It's all a part of you. So when you see that's the beauty, that's beauty. That's beauty. It's not the thing itself. Right. It's beautiful when you are seeing shared interests with another, when you're no longer walking a world of separation. You know, that's beautiful according to the Course. The Course is unique because it doesn't acknowledge behavior in the world, or it doesn't acknowledge the world being the cause of anything, because it says there is no world. We have to remember that. I mean, it really does say if there's no world, what he means is the world we're seeing is in our mind. Everything is in our mind. The people that we're in relationships with, they're in our minds. He actually says, I love this line, there's nothing outside of you. This is what you must ultimately learn. Nothing outside of you. So if there's nothing outside of us, then the beauty that we see in the world is a reflection of the beauty of choosing the right mind, of the Holy Spirit. That's beautiful.
Chapter 21, the world we see is the outer picture of an inward condition.
Yes, yes. then that though can be reflected in our relationships. When you're choosing the right mind or the Holy Spirit as your teacher, that becomes, you become a living demonstration. You become, I like to say, a living will of God. You become a living will of God. What God wills for you is to be joyous as he created you, to be in a state of true peace. You become that living will of God when you are vigilant only for God and you're in your right mind. You're reflecting that in your partnership and in your whoever you're in relationship with. It doesn't have to be a person. It could be anything. But you're reflecting your shared interest in that you're one, your oneness with that other, and that's holy. That's what's holy. And that's a holy relationship. And ultimately, all relationships here, the holiness really is reflective of the holy nature of all of us being a part of God and that relationship with God. In other words, that we're not separate from God. But yes, it has to, the level here where we're experiencing ourselves, that gets reflected, that right-mindedness and connection with God as all there is, can be a beautiful reflection and enhance then our relationships. And then it becomes what I write in my book, a spiritual partnership, rather than sort of more of a traditionally based marriage where it's still based on, that you're trying to get something from someone else and get your needs met that you feel you lack within, projecting your own unconscious guilt onto others. That's the special relationship. So until we really, really understand what we're doing and understand what a holy relationship really is, we need to develop this mindset, this awareness, and then just start practicing thinking differently, practice, forgiveness on a daily basis with whatever comes up, knowing that you're always forgiving yourself, even if it looks like you're forgiving another person. Because if there's no world and no people really out there, we're not really even forgiving bodies. We're forgiving our own thought of separation and feeling of lack, that we've lost God. It always comes back to that. But since our experience is that we're here in a world of time and space and we have relationships, we do need to work with what we have, where we are here. And that's why the Course emphasizes forgiveness, because forgiveness leads us to that, right? To that ultimate reality of our true oneness, true reality. And it leads us to a place where we no longer feel that we need another to complete us, but we're whole within ourselves. And when you enter a relationship already feeling whole, oh my gosh, how powerful is that? You're with that person then because you just enjoy being with them, but you're no longer with them coming from a state of lack in some way. Again, this is not easy and this takes practice. So this is why we're all appearing to be here, is to practice these holy, right? Making our relationships holy, because that precedes through forgiveness, because that precedes our awakening in God, having a happy dream experience. And our relationships are the perfect, right, opportunities that we have to practice. Practice being what we really are, whole already within ourselves. And sometimes we have to go through some struggles. We go through struggles and hardships to get to this deeper understanding of what this is all for, what this is all about. And then ultimately, what is it leading us to? What is all this hardship leading us to? Well, if we use every hardship as an opportunity, recognizing it for what it is, an opportunity to heal our wrong-mindedness. Because once we heal our wrong-mindedness and heal the guilt in the unconscious mind over the separation, there's only one voice that's left to listen to. That's the Holy Spirit. And then we'll start to listen only to that voice. And that will also be reflected in our relationships. And how holy is that? How that means you're using your relationship for a holy purpose. Even when things are difficult, if you're using it for a holy purpose, then you're furthering your awakening yourself on the path
So
home.
let me ask you this.
Yeah.
What was the impetus for you in writing this book? Why a book on holy relationships? And for those, there will be probably listeners that never heard about this term, a holy relationship. Maybe in your own words, what does that mean? And why did you do this, Cindy? What happened? What moved you in this direction? Let me write a book about holy relationships. Yeah. Why?
Well, I've always been an observer of people ever since I can remember. When I was really little, I'm an observer. I sit and I just watch relationships. I watch people interact. And this started when I was really little. I don't know. I just became very interested in human behavior. That's probably why I got into psychology, which I did. But so I was very interested in human behavior, and I would watch my own parents and their dynamics going back and forth. And if they got into an argument, I would just observe, and I would watch when, let's say, my father said something to my mother. I would turn to my mother and watch and observe her behavior, her reaction. And I would vice versa. Then I would do the same. And I would do this. I found myself doing this throughout my life. And I'd be sitting maybe at a restaurant, and I just look at people, and I just found myself so interested in how they were responding to each other and how they were being with each other. And the more I noticed, if I noticed discord or this conflict, it fascinated me, because I found myself thinking thoughts like, you know what? Inspiration started to come to me that, I almost wish I could go up to those people, to that couple, and give them my perspective, because I feel like there's another way that this could be looked at and be thought about that maybe these people haven't thought about before. Now, I would find myself doing this, realizing that in my own life, I wasn't perfect either, and my relationships weren't perfect. I wasn't saying that, I had all the answers, but I just found myself very inspired to dig deeper and want to be truly helpful, and because the more I observed conflict, it just made me more want to say, you know what? I know that there is another way to look at this. And some of this happened even before I got into A Course in Miracles, that I know that I could be truly helpful, because I'm getting inspiration, when I'm with people, about what I could contribute, knowing though that it could also help me, because I wasn't perfect either, and my relationships weren't perfect. But then when I found the Course, and then I started to learn what the Course was saying about, what really is it? What is a holy relationship? Then I started to put everything together, and I thought, you know what, this is needed. As I looked about the world and saw so much conflict, and people just, we're not only within their own families, not getting along, being estranged from their own family members, friends, but the world in general, it just inspired me to want to write a book and emphasize, what a holy relationship is, because I knew in the bigger picture, you know what, this helps all of us transcend the special relationship. And it's needed. There are not many books out there, aside from A Course in Miracles, where you're really hearing about a holy relationship. I don't know of that many books that talk about that. And I thought, so that was the inspiration, is that I felt like it was needed. Simple as that. I felt that it was needed. But I had a background of already being interested. And I've always been, and I still am, an observer. And I can see, sometimes I'm very empathic too. Sometimes I can see something from another perspective, whereas someone might not be looking at it that way. But I thought, you know what, I'd like to have a way for people, to look at something differently, just to say, this is another way. It doesn't have to be the only way, but have you pondered this? Have you thought of how to handle this situation? Have you thought about thinking about it this way, from this perspective? And just showing people that they don't have to settle for the same, remaining at the same level of awareness, of trying to solve a problem, like Einstein said, at the same level of consciousness at which the problem was created. There's a way you want to work, you want to rise above that and go in and think about and find new solutions, new ways of thinking about things that the Course gives us. That's what the Course in Miracles gives us, of looking at everything that helps you transcend the status quo of how you've been living your life, since you were born. So it raises to question, it brings to question, it raises to question their whole thought system of how you thought since you were born. We were trained to always handle certain problems or issues and relationships a certain way. Well, if this problem happens, then you do this. If this problem happens, then you go see this person. But what if everything is in the mind and how you're thinking about it? The part about everything being in the mind has been lost. It's been forgotten. The part that we're decision-making minds has been lost. So when we can come back to that, that's the starting point. We start in our own minds and then let it trickle down into showing up as symbols. Things can show up in the dream and this world that can support your decision to want to be well, have a healthy relationship, have a holy relationship. Those things can show up as symbols once you first decide in your own mind that that's what you want, but you have to want it. And then we need to understand, well, how do you get there? And then how the means, of how do you get there? And again, I always bring up how important forgiveness is as part of that process of how you get there to the holy relationship.
So let's talk about that. Let's first, maybe, if you don't mind, defining forgiveness again. I know that we've done this in previous episodes.
It needs to be repeated.
Exactly. So what is forgiveness? What role does it play in this process? And maybe if you have a practical example, because we have plenty every day. Maybe just offer something more concrete for our listeners. Thank you.
Well, forgiveness is letting go of the idea that something or someone outside of you is the cause of your problem. It's letting go that something outside of you has that much power to cause you to feel upset. There's no power outside ever. There's only power in your own mind to make a decision. Your decision-making mind has the power. So forgiveness recognizes that that's the cause. In other words, your decision-making mind is the cause of you being happy. If you're happy, the decision-making mind, your mind, is also the cause of you being sad or hurt in any way, feeling afraid, anxious, depressed. The decision-making mind is you. You're the decision maker. So if you recognize that and take control of that, forgiveness recognizes that's where the cause always is. That you identify the cause of your upset. If it's something where you feel disturbed or upset by, you recognize, well, I must have been thinking with the wrong part of my mind. I'm thinking about this with the teacher we call the ego, which is a teacher of pain. It's a teacher of separation, a teacher that wants me to maintain my innocence at the expense of another. It says the other person's guilty and the reason why that I've lost my peace. Forgiveness turns that around, flips the script, says, no, I am the cause of the world I see. I am the cause of how I feel, what I'm thinking. Then when you recognize that that's the cause, you already are starting the process of you're retaining your power now, because you get to decide how you're interpreting this person or event or the world in general. Then once you decide, you can change your mind, which is what forgiveness is. You're changing your mind And you're recognizing that not only does that other person is not really the cause of the problem, but that person that I think is a real person is not even really there, because again, there's no world. This is all a projection coming from the mind. That's part of the ego mind that projected the world. And if this is a projection, then what I'm doing is recognizing again, taking myself back to my power so I can choose again. And then turning everything over to the Holy Spirit and trusting in his strength. Your right part of your mind, the Holy Spirit speaks through that part of the mind and handles the correction. The correction is the Holy Spirit's, right, streaming through you, speaking through you, being the vision through you, helping you to see the other person with spiritual sight, which is where you remember their innocence.
Mm-hmm.
This is part of forgiveness, is that you overlook errors of others. You overlook the form or the behavior, and recognizing they're not their behavior, but they're still perfect at home in God, just like you are. Nothing's really happened. They haven't really done anything, really sinned, as we say, because we've never left heaven. We've never left God. We never left our source. There is no separation. That's why they're innocent. So forgiveness is seeing with spiritual sight. This is all part of it. Recognizing, first of all, if you get upset, you're the cause. Then you let it go and you replace your grievance with the thought system of the Holy Spirit, again, that sees with true vision, remembers who the person really is, which means you're remembering who you really are, still at home in God, also totally innocent. This is just a dream. And we forgive our projected images. All this is part of forgiveness. We forgive our projected images and ourselves for dreaming them. And then we let it go into the Holy Spirit's hands. We don't have to worry about all the details of the outcome of our forgiveness, of what it has to look like. And is this person going to change as a result of my forgiveness? They don't always change just because we're forgiving. But that's not the point. The point is you're changing, your mind is changing, and you're becoming more peaceful. Not that the other person, you have to fix the other person. But sometimes you might be surprised, because sometimes people might make a shift or change. And we can't judge that, or why some people change, some people don't. But we want to allow people their process too, and not interfere. And so as you can see, true forgiveness is very different than the world's view of forgiveness. That, just briefly, the world's view, remember, says, well, yeah, I have to forgive this person. And I'm forgiving this person, number one, because they're a real person, but I'm forgiving them because they really hurt me. They really did something to me.
Yeah.
But that's not true forgiveness, because
we see the cost to be out there rather than in here.
Exactly. When you go back to that idea, then you're still making it real.
Mm-hmm.
Making what they did real to your mind. That says they're guilty. And if they're guilty, guess what? You're guilty too, because there's no separation. Literally, we're one mind. So as you see another, you see yourself.
And how I feel is predicated on that perception of the other.
Yeah. So if we're still forgiving from a place of you really did it, but I'm going to forgive you, but you're still guilty.
I'm such a noble character.
But yeah. And I understand that there are well-intentioned people that really want to forgive, and I get that. And it's, I mean, they don't, and there's not a deeper understanding too of what true forgiveness really means. And we've all done that. I mean, I've also done that, where I've forgiven someone in that old traditional way, or before I really understood what true forgiveness was. I still was sort of making that person guilty in the cause of my upset, and not recognizing, and which put me again at the effect, and still maintaining my victimhood. So you were asking for an example of how I forgave. You were asking me, let's use a practical example. And this is one I've used before, but not everybody would maybe have heard this, but it's just because it was one of, I think, the best examples I can give of something specific, of how I handled something, which I could have handled a whole different way. Early on in my marriage with Gary, there were people that weren't quite sure, I think, about our relationship, because I could sense that people were sort of looking at me like, who is this girl? What is she, like 20 years old, you know? And because I met Gary when I was 35, but I was really young. But I was not.
And you look at that too. You look like you were 20.
But I could tell, and Gary could too. We actually joke about it. Like Gary's like, people are probably thinking I'm robbing the cradle, you know, and like, what's going on with this? And this is not going to last. And like, you know, and all this stuff, you know, and this is really, what is this? You know, who is this girl coming in? What does she have to say? Or, you know, but anyway, I'll never forget this, not out of not forgiving it, just because it just surprised me. I was checking my emails, and I got an email from someone that I never met before. And so I didn't know this person didn't know me. And the only thing this man would have known about me would be just what he read about me, or maybe saw me in a podcast or interview or doing a teaching or something, but didn't really know me personally at all. And I didn't recognize his name or anything, but he just sent me it was actually a very short email, but all he said was, "Hello, Cindy, you don't fool me. I know that you married Gary for his money."
Yeah.
And that was it. And he just signed his name. And I have to say, honestly, I guess at that point, I was already up to the point in my forgiveness practice where I actually found it amusing. I wasn't hurt by it. I started to think there was true forgiveness, because I was surprised, but I was thinking, oh my gosh, I was amused that this person would just email me out of the blue and just make that assumption, that judgment, right? Which was a judgment. And so I just thought for a minute, and I thought, that is so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought in a moment, I said, but this isn't bothering me. It's almost like this should bother me, but it's not bothering me that this person said. If anything, I started to feel compassion. And I remembered something in the course, which is part of the attitude of forgiveness. If someone is not expressing love, they're calling out for it.
Mm-hmm.
They're calling out for love, no matter what the form looks like. If it's not loving, it's a call for love.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remembered that. I said, oh, this person is calling out for love. And then I asked the Holy Spirit, should I respond to this email? And or just let it go?
Mm-hmm.
And my answer was, no, respond, because I can demonstrate that this had no impact on me.
Mm-hmm.
I can demonstrate that the separation from God has not occurred. This person, there's no harm done. Nothing happened, which is the message of the course. As part of forgiveness means no one really did anything to you to harm you, unless you give them that power, unless they believe that you did, right? That's the message of the course. If you believe you can be harmed,
Mm-hmm.
then you're going to feel judged and feel harmed and feel like you've been attacked. But so I decided to respond, and I wrote back and I said, hello. I said, thank you for sharing your thoughts with me. I said, you don't fool me either. I said, I know what you are. You know, you're really a son of God, just like we both are. I said, you don't fool me either. I said, no harm's done. I said, I hope we can actually meet someday. I think it'd be an interesting meeting. And again, thank you for sharing your email, and perhaps we'll meet. And that was it. And I said, God blessed him on his journey. And that was it.
Beautiful response, Cindy.
And then I got one more email from him, but it wasn't an attack email. It was just one more email. And all he said was, hello, Cindy, I see you have the kindness thing down. But it was just, I see you have the kindness thing down. And then that was it. And then I never heard from him again. So, but do you see that when you don't attack back or feel, right, and maintain your strong position that you know you're clear about what you are, that you're holy, and you see through that, you're allowing the holiness to see through to the holiness of others. Where does that energy go? If that person, then there's nothing for them to attack when you're not accepting their attack. Where's that attack going to go? Right back to right back to you, right back to the person that's doing the attack, because it can't go anywhere else. So by my saying, I now accept this, right? This seeming attack wasn't an attack really, but if I don't accept that offering of what that person was offering, nothing happened. That means I'm demonstrating that nothing happened. That person, no harm's done, which means there's no reason for that person to feel attacked, that they need to attack or even to feel anger. There's no need to even feel that for the other person. So that's what we do when we truly forgive. We're giving the other person and ourselves at the same time a blessing. And we're remembering our true nature as the Christ as we all are. And this is true forgiveness. Now, have I always been perfect at true forgiveness? No. Not who is really all the time, but you get better and better at it. And you keep, the more you remember that that's what true forgiveness really means. And you just keep practicing, you do get better and better at it. But the key to true forgiveness is letting go of the outcome of your forgiveness, of what it has to look like. Because if we're still attached to that person we are attempting to forgive, or thinking we're still forgiving a person, but thinking they have to change because we're forgiving, we're still into the forgiveness to destroy mode, because we're still attached to the outcome, which means we haven't really let it go. We haven't really let this go, because we wouldn't feel that pull towards, oh, this person, it would still annoy us in some way. Still wouldn't feel complete. So as long as we feel that energy around it that says, I'm not feeling totally at peace with this. We haven't fully forgiven it. But you can chip away at it. Just keep chipping away at it. That's the practice of it. You keep doing it. You keep persevering. You keep going, and you keep trusting in the process, and keep trusting that the world. There's no world. So why does the world have to change? If there's no world, it doesn't have to change. You change your mind about the world. Your mind about the world, just like Gandhi said.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just Gandhi. We always use Gandhi, but it was the perfect statement. Be the change you wish to see in the world. Be that change, within yourself. Michael Jackson's, song "Man in the Mirror." If you listen to those lyrics, that's saying the same thing. If I want to change, I have to change the man in the mirror. I have to look and say, what is the reflection that I'm seeing in the mirror? Because the reflection is only a reflection of what I am thinking in my own mind. The world is our reflection, is the mirror. And if we go look about and see the world, and we see attack, viciousness, we see all the violence and all the suffering, but we choose to stay there in our minds, not that we're not going to notice it, but if we choose to dwell on it and condemn the world for what we think it's doing, that's a reflection of choosing the ego in our own minds, that teacher, because that's why we're seeing a world then that we're condemning, because we're choosing to condemn ourselves in our mind. So if we change the teacher, though, and recognize that all violence, all abuse is a call for union, call for love, then we're flipping the script again, which means we're flipping to the different teacher. Now, this doesn't mean you have to take abuse if it's something personal going on. This is the key. You might need to remove yourself from a relationship or a situation, because that's loving. It's a loving thing to do. You don't need to be beaten up and to prove a point that you're forgiving. You want to take care of yourself, and it's not loving to remain if in a relationship, if it's hurting you or harming you in an abusive sense of the word. I mean, really abusive. So you want to be practical as well and take care of yourself.
Yeah.
So forgiving doesn't mean you have to sit there and have someone beat you over the head with a bat, but in your mind you're going, but I'm forgiving it. I'm forgiving it. This person keeps beating you and you're going, oh, but I'm forgiving it. That's not loving to you or the other person to do that. It just reinforces the guilt in the mind and keeps that the violent thought system going. So, and those situations, those are unique situations where, yes, you want to be practical at the level of the world and really take good care of yourself. So I hope we've established some ground here, some difference of what it means to then truly forgive. And when we're not really forgiving, but also giving an example of what it means to truly forgive, which means in your mind, again, no real harm has been done.
Yeah.
If you can get to that point, which does take practice.
I think you established process with your examples very well, and by differentiating between the unholy and the holy relationship, and really making clear what role forgiveness plays in returning to that holy mind within first, which opens the gateway to a holy relationship. But the key is forgiveness. I also love, and you've done this very nicely in your book as well as this in this interview, at least so far, you've been talking about how important it is to keep the levels of analysis separate. The Course in Miracle talks about, it's a course of the mind, talks about that level of analysis, which you do within a process where you are the puppeteer. You're not the puppet, you are in control. And in fact, the Course goes one step further to say that's the only place at which you can exert any control. Right? Yeah. You can't exert any control at the level of the projection, which is the effect, is something that comes from your choice here, right? So the level of the Course, you make a choice, and then you have this, projection, which really constitutes what we call reality. Right. And how, like you said, we need to be practical. You are in an unhealthy relationship, you're being abused. What is the loving thing to do? Well, sometimes that loving thing to do may be to leave the relationship, maybe to call the authorities, or act appropriately. Right. Somebody comes attacking you, you don't stay there and say, I'm going to forgive. No, you're running, run.
That's right.
As fast as you can.
That's right.
Get out of harm's way, right?
That's right.
So,
that's very right.
Beautiful process that you're establishing there. And the role that forgiveness plays. And I think you've done that wonderfully. Let me ask you a question. In your book, you talk about various pillars of a holy relationship. And of course, part of that is the process of forgiveness that can bring one in the realm of a holy relationship and a holy mind first. Mm-hmm. Tell us more about that. What are some of the pillars that you emphasize in your book as being central to living in a holy relationship and being in that mindset that precipitates the possibility of a holy relationship and seeing no lack in yourself and the other?
This starts with it does require some awareness. You have to first even be aware that there might even be a problem. Like, we're so used to seeing problems as we're just so used to allowing ourselves to think and let the ego dominate our minds that we don't even know sometimes what's loving and what's not, where we become confused. So we've confused sacrifice with love, and all these things, and pain and pleasure go together, and everything's become confused. So it starts with an awareness of starting to question yourself, question your relationship, your very relationship, of what parts of it are parts that are cultivating, right, this unity and this love and what does that really look like, and what does that mean, and what does that feel like? And you're starting to get used to the idea, and then but then separate that out from the parts that, on a day-to-day basis of your relationship. How do you feel? We can even bring it back to something as basic as, how do you feel on a day-to-day basis with your partner or whoever it is? Is it a constant struggle? If it is, there's something for you to look at. There's something deeper to inquire about. But to start, again, the pillars you were talking about of the holy relationship starts also with practicing non-judgment of your partner or whoever it is. In other words, allowing that person, their process, without stepping in and feeling the need to be right and tell them and possessing and owning the other and saying, starting assigning roles to your partner because you think you know what's best, right, for that person, which how do we know what's best for that person in the situation? We tend to step in very quickly and judge another before we have all the facts, before we even we don't understand what we see until we want to understand and cultivate the art of listening. That's part of having a holy relationship, is learning how to listen well, properly, listen to be able to get that deeper meaning in the content in your partnership. And again, when I say partnership, this could be a coworker relationship.
Oh, totally.
It could be, a sibling, not just romantically. This applies to any relationship. Practice the art of I do write about the art of listening in my book as one of the ways of how you can cultivate a holy relationship, is learning how to understand what someone is really trying to communicate to you, because their tone might sound really happy when they're talking to you. I mean, let me say the opposite. They're talking to you, but they're saying to you, their words are saying, I'm so happy because this happened and this happened and this happened, but their tone is like this. And you're like, but wait, you're telling me that you're happy, but you don't sound very happy. What's going on there? Or you want to go, so you want to try to get the deeper meaning and the deeper content of what this person's trying to share with you.
Sometimes it's in the posture,
In the posture.
I'm really happy to see you, but my shoulders, look at my shoulders.
Yeah, I mean, really,
I'm so happy to see you.
Exactly. There's such a difference.
Let's
Right. And not only if somebody's just speaking to you, attempt to understand what it is, get clear on what they're communicating to you by reflecting back to them, maybe what they're saying to make sure that you understand clearly what they're saying. And it helps the other person feel that sense that you care, that they feel, look, people here need to be valued, seen, heard. Let's face it, bodies need that. Bodies need that. Not that when we get to the highest level, we'll no longer need that. But until we're ultimately living the holy relationship, there are needs that we have, and we can't deny that. We can't deny that. That would be an unworthy form of denial. No. So in the meantime, we do want, so the art of listening really, really lets your partner, and I tell you, it can transform a relationship to the point where an argument might be started. It literally can stop an argument from happening because the other person feels heard and understood. Now, you can get to the place, though, where all that matters to you is that you just understand. You don't even need to be understood. Again, that's really living, embodying the holy relationship, but we need to get there. And I realize that. So that the course helping us to have that much, right, worthiness, where we cultivate that worthy sense of worth in ourselves, which happens when we undo the ego more and more through forgiveness. We develop this sense of worth where we're just like the St. Francis prayer says, help me not need to be understood, but to understand. Help me not need to be loved, but to be loved, to understand what it means to love. That's very different than feeling like we're lacking something and we need, but we can be those that are aware, can start demonstrating this with their partners, with whoever they're with. And that is cultivating a holy relationship right there. Part of it is the listening aspect, communication. Fearless communication, another point, pillar that I talk, you can learn to communicate without fear, which means that you're starting, where's your starting point when you attempt to join with another? Attempt to center yourself and start with the Holy Spirit in your mind instead of the ego before you even enter a communication. Where are you in your mind when you attempt a communication? When you get your mind starts being trained to get really good at this, all of these things are pillars of a holy relationship that help cultivate it and strengthen it. You know, when you're doing your best, it starts with whoever's most aware at the time. Has to be that way, because not everybody's going to be aware. But
what a beautiful thing you just said. Hold on a second there. What a beautiful thing you just said. A breath taken in a Holy Spirit mind, it's instantly received as such. And that sets the tone of the communication.
Yeah.
In a relationship. What a profound thing. Think about that for a moment. Imagine that every time we want to interact with another, we take a breath in the holy mind with the intent of sharing that with another.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's such a simple exercise to do, isn't it?
It actually is.
Simple.
It's easy to forget, but the more it's practiced, it will be less. You'll just remember more and more that where you're starting, that where's my, I just like to say, where am I starting from in my mind? What's the clarification of your goal, of the conversation even? What is my purpose? What do I want to come of this? What do I want to come of this? Start from the beginning, So that way, when you enter this arena where you might feel anxious to communicate with someone or afraid, if you're already starting with a clear purpose in mind, I assure you it's going to go a bit different. At least you'll have a stronger sense of, of empowerment when you're clear about what your purpose is. The other person doesn't even have to you don't have to make it about the other person. It's just about you. And then that person, at some level, will sense that confidence, that sort of sense of certainty
and that
you're bringing into the conversation, and it makes them feel less anxious and less afraid.
Yeah.
And you can do it in a calm, loving, non-judgmental way. You can be authoritative sometimes if there needs to be a little sense of authority, but loving. It doesn't have to be judgmental. So you're not projecting, in other words. This is not, in a holy relationship, one would know when they're projecting, and that's a no-no. It doesn't mean that you're guilty. You just forgive yourself if you feel you projected something onto your partner, or you can just acknowledge that, I just made a mistake. I was in my wrong mind. I was in my wrong mind when I attempted that, and it didn't work so well. That's okay. I have another chance. I can to choose again, and we always have more chances. But that's the attitude, and you don't have to make it so hard and heavy and that you're guilty, because the last thing that we want to reinforce is that we're guilty.
Right.
The whole point of the course is guilt is just a belief that we made up. No matter who it is, even it could be someone that you're judging as being really guilty of something. On the level of form, on the level of the world, sure, there are consequences. If you kill someone, you're going to go to jail, or you're going to, that's the consequence on the level of but it doesn't mean at the highest level, they're still a son of God. At the highest level, they're still innocent. At the highest level. Here we have rules we have to follow in the world. But at the highest level, we can still see that person, even if they committed a crime, we can still choose to remember who they really are. That's telling yourself, you're reminding yourself that you are worthy too, and you're equal as a son of God, as that other son of God.
You just made me, wow, I'm having all those metaphors and images when you talk, Cindy. You're such a beautiful being. This reminds me of the nature of rain, just like the nature of pure spirit is the same, whether like the nature of rain, whether it grows thorns or whether it grows roses, the nature of the rain remains the same. The same thing with the nature of the human spirit, Holy Spirit, pure spirit remains pure spirit, no matter what it appears to do at the level of form or the shape that it takes.
The Holy Spirit calls for love, but it doesn't judge the call for love. It doesn't judge the call or judge the person calling for love or make a hierarchy, right, of the calls for love and say, oh, this person, this problem is way, more deserving of my forgiveness or love than this problem. The Holy Spirit sees it all the same. It's either just a call for love or an expression of love. Call for love or if it's all in one category. There's no, this person is less worthy than this person over here because this person murdered someone and this person just, forgot to feed their dog. Just throwing out example, but there's no difference to the Holy Spirit. A call for love is a call for love. And that period. So the Holy Spirit's answer is always love, but it doesn't withhold perfect love from anyone, regardless of the form the call for love takes. And this is what Jesus was teaching. Let's remember, this is what Jesus was actually teaching and demonstrating. I wanted to read something from, I put it in my book. One of the quotes I wanted to read was just about sometimes, how, especially in relationships, we might feel we made a mistake and we might feel guilty about something and we beat ourselves up for it. And we go, God, I think I just ruined this whole thing, or I might have even sabotaged my whole relationship, or I might, but anyway, that we get into this kind of thinking and then we get, and then we go down this spiral and it might make us really anxious or afraid. And I read this quote, and I thought it was really good by Ralph Waldo Emerson. And this is what this quote says about how we can handle, right, if we feel this way, we feel like we're beating ourselves up about something. If you're in a conflict with someone, it says, finish each day and be done with it. You have done what you could. Some blunders and absurdities no doubt crept in. Forget them as soon as you can. Tomorrow is a new day. You shall begin it serenely and with too high a spirit to be encumbered with your old nonsense. You shall begin your day with too high a spirit to be encumbered with your old nonsense. That's in a way, that's part of forgiveness, having a forgiving attitude.
Totally.
Right?
Because otherwise we end up carrying this garbage.
Keep carrying the grievance over and over and over again.
And imprisoning ourselves to a condition that does not belong to us in the first place. It's like self-made and self-inflicted. What for?
Yeah, we keep playing and carrying, things with us from the past that we like to bring into the present. I mean, again, we all do this, and then but when we start to recognize it more and more, how much we do carry things and bring the past and keep bringing it into the present, and we keep reliving it, the same thing over and over again until we really truly have forgiven it. It will keep replaying like an old tape, a broken record, playing over and over and over again, reliving with a tiny mad idea of separation over and over again until we start to listen to what we're doing. And then once we really get it, what we're doing, and say, oh, I got it, I see what I've been doing, then we can start the process of making a shift and recognizing there really is a better way. There is another way, and then we can really start moving in that direction. And in regards to relationships, oftentimes in relationships too, there's this feeling of, because we're married to someone, in a way, to the ego, it feels like we almost own that person in a way. We monitor their every move, or we get, if they so much as look at someone else, we get anxious, or we might feel jealous, or all of this. I have one more quote I just think is really powerful in regards to this that I will also want to read, because it speaks to this idea that yes, you have your life together with your partner, and that's beautiful. You have your life together, but you're also whole within yourselves. And it's good to remember that you also each have your own path, and you may not always be in sync with hobbies, things you want to do. Sometimes one partner or a person might want to feel like they might want to do something different than the other partner, or maybe you feel you have a rapport with a group of people and you want to go out with them and have a good time, but your partner they're not feeling it. That's okay. Nothing always you have to be so intertwined where you have to feel that you're giving up something or sacrificing something, just for the sake of pleasing the other. And this is what this quote speaks to. And I just want to read this, but it's done in a poetic way, and it makes you think about it a little bit. This is by Khalil Gibran, a prophet.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay. This says, and this is so beautiful, the way what this says. Give your hearts. Oh, wait. And also read between the lines of what this is saying really deeply. Okay. Give your hearts, but not into each other's keeping. For only the hand of life can contain your hearts. And stand together, yet not too near together. For the pillars of the temple stand apart, and the oak tree and the cypress grow not in each other's shadow. So if
own yourself, don't think that you have to own the other.
Allow room for each to grow in their own right, and allow the other their own process, their own space, process, and speed to grow. That's part of cultivating a holy relationship too. When you recognize that, when you're stepping in too much, playing the role of a mother or father to your spouse, instead of, that's not our role, is to be a mother and a father.
Or infantilizing your partner.
And not allowing themselves that room and that stand near together, but not too near to get where you're smothering the other, your own ideas of what you think that person should be. This is one of the most important elements ever in any relationship. And the reason I can speak to this is because I've done this very thing where I have not allowed, people in past relationships or even my current one at times. Sometimes, I realize when I have moved into that space of, oh, wait a minute, I'm way too close to this. I need to step back and allow that person, whoever it is, it doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. It could be anybody, a coworker, whatever, daughter, son, sibling, but any relationship where you're moving into that area of you want so much for that other person to be what you think, you project it onto them, what you feel you didn't have, so you want them to have it, or but that might not be their path. And this could be your spouse, it could be anybody. So we just want.
And these are also precursors to being sensual and sexuality and intimacy.
Oh, sure.
And a good sexual relationship is also predicated on that, because that gives rise to intimacy. When you're able to, come as close as you can be to your lover, and just restrain yourself from, taking the bite from the cake as much as, can I just stay there and love? Can I breathe slowly and with the eyes wide open, look in the eyes of my lover and feel and allow that love to, like a beautiful flower, to infiltrate my senses without me picking at the flowers yet, just staying there. Can I do that? And that's part of owning yourself, allowing the other person to own themselves and not not again part of an unholy relationship. If you really want to experience intimacy with another person, you ought to be able to do that. Otherwise, it becomes consumption, and that's all. There's no connection, or there's very little connection. You want connection. You want the highest peak of connection that you can get. You ought to have those, obey by those pillars of the holy relationships that you described so beautifully here and also in your book.
It's so that was beautiful too. What you just shared, it, how you brought all that back together. It was beautiful too. And intimacy, it just makes every intimacy and everything feel more connected. You feel even more joined.
Oh yeah,
with your partner,
drunk.
People,
I mean, really,
when you're allowing all this, the space and all this, it can just make everything more enjoyable.
Who wrote The Seduction of Spirit? I think it was Deepak Chopra, because I remember seeing the title of the book and I said, wow, what a great title for a book, The Seduction of Spirit. Spirit is very seductive.
Yeah.
Spirit.
Yeah. It's interesting you said that. I've often thought of it in that way. It sort of being seductive in the positive sense of the word, really, that it feels almost like, wow, that is the I always say this, that's what it reminds me, because when I think about that, I always say, I am more than anything, I'm completely turned on by spirit.
Oh, totally.
Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
I'm completely turned on by spirit.
Totally.
And I mean that in the highest sense. I'm
what?
That excites me.
Totally. I
turned on by wisdom, wisdom. Spirit.
I talk to cancer patients who, and it's not because they're cancer patients. There could be, anybody really that says, "Gee, I used to be in love with my partner. I used to feel it when we did it, and now I can't feel anything. I can't." And at the base of all this is because we don't own each other anymore. We think that I own the other, that the other is part of who I am. I'm going to control everything. I'm going to dictate everything when they eat, when they sleep, when they have sex, when they go outside, when they come indoors, and to be able to liberate yourself and the other. And get in touch with your spirit, own that. Yeah, inwardly. And to be able to be in that high and want to meet the other on that playground of pure spirit. Oh, well, that's when things get hot.
That's you said it. That is more of a turn on than anything else,
totally,
in my opinion.
Totally.
And when you at this level, when you see people in that mindset and that confident and that is like they're being a magnet. They become a magnet for people.
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. We have it backwards where we think hot, or we're attracted to someone because of what they look like, because that's what the first experience is what your body's eyes are seeing. That's what we're trained to go, oh, that's a good looking person. We're going to, or whatever, the beauty's in the eye of the beholder, as we know.
And how many young people will tell you that was so disappointing? They looked amazing. And
exactly.
awful. Did you have no. Did you feel high? No. It was awful.
Exactly. And then they have a completely opposite experience. And that because that's not the foundation. That's not a permanent situation. When you're coming from yourself
and come close to the other, can the other person own themselves and not want anything from you or anybody because they see themselves holy and complete? They see you holy and complete. Can you come close, stay there and breathe in that pasture of holiness? Not wanting to grab it, but not wanting to pull it away either. Just be there, stay there, and really allow the fullness of that envelop you both. Can you stay there? Because that's not too many people can even do that. Even if it takes practice. It's about being happy. The French have a way of saying this: being happy dans sa peau, being happy in your own skin.
Yeah. When that starts to happen, when you're happy in your own skin and you're owning yourself. I mean, in other words, you're very comfortable with who you are, and you've made it, in my opinion. You've made it. That's success. When you're joyful, but not because of something else. You're just you're like a living example of joy, or joy just because, because that's how you were created. And you're connecting with that joy, that's the spirit. And
I'm going to look up a poem by Rumi now, because I'm, that's exactly what you're saying, Rumi. Pasture, wrongdoing. Let's see if the poem comes up. Thanks, Google. Oh, Rumi, didn't he get it right? Listen to this, Cindy. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. Again, out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there's a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about, full of love, full of nothing but love. What else do you want to talk about?
Yeah.
That's why lovers, grab on each other and come closer. No, you're talking too much. Quiet.
Yeah, that is a beautiful one. Beautiful one. Rumi. Yeah. What a beautiful, reminder to, it's said in such a poetic way, that's a very powerful one. That's one of my favorites, which I hadn't heard in quite a while. So I really appreciate you sharing that again, because that's part of this mindset that we're talking about. It's part of the mindset that we're talking about. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think your whole book is about that. Yeah. And I think you expressed that so wonderfully. I just so much enjoyed your book. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today about your book. Any thoughts that come to mind, any particular chapter that you want to guide at, any particular chapter that means a lot to you in your growth, and that you might want to point us to from your book, just before.
There are little tidbits in all of them, but but I think fearless communication is for me is a good chapter, because I started out, and all my relationships have always started out with a bit of fear in them, a bit of anxiety in them. So the more I've cultivated, forgiveness and practiced forgiveness and all of that, I think that chapter has points in there that were not only relevant to my own life, but also share some learnings and some, things in there, some points that can help one to work through that idea when you really want to approach a subject with someone or something, but yet you feel pulled, something that fear is pulling you back, and you're not able to express yourself, and the way that you want. So that chapter, I'm hoping that chapter will be very helpful for people who also have felt that too. But all the chapters have, of course, things in them. But this one, I think this is one area where a lot of people do feel fear and hesitancy when they want to, when there's confrontation involved, right? Confrontation, and who doesn't at some point go, gosh, I'm dreading this conversation, or I'm dreading this. Like, so I wanted to write a
showstopper for all of us.
Yeah. I mean, so I wanted to write a chapter that spoke to that.
Beautiful. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Cindy. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I'm really looking forward to our next podcast, and I'm sure we will dwell a little more deeper into some of those chapters that you've written when you talk about, you peel off this process of forgiveness, moving towards a holy relationship. There's so much wisdom in your book, and I think it's going to help so many people. I do not believe that health and healing, it's possible without having attained some understanding of how you can see other people's interests as your own, how you can see the opportunities that lie in relationships to come to know yourself. And that's really the basic premise of your book. I think you've done a terrific job with it. Bless you for taking the time to write this. And I look forward to many, many, many more conversations with you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on again, too. I really, really appreciated it. And I enjoyed our discussion.
And this concludes my conversation with Cindy Lora Renard. To learn more about Cindy's book or to purchase her book, you can go on Amazon or on her website at www.cindylora.com. Until next time, be well and take care of yourselves.